What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Today, me and Tuck are going to share with you the 7 methods we use to grow tons of food in a tiny garden. Let's go! The first method I use to grow tons of food is what I like to call have another plant on deck. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, when I harvest something like lettuce, what I like to do is first grab this lettuce, let's take it out. This is a beautiful Pierrot Butterhead lettuce. Just harvest this. So when I harvest a beautiful lettuce like this, I always like to make sure that I have another plant on deck ready to go in that's already growing. So what I'll do is I'll dig out the root ball on this plant right here. I'll just go in there and just dig it out. Just easily pull it out just like that. Put this into here. And then right here, we've got another Pierrot Butterhead. We're just gonna replace this one. And the way I achieve this is I always make sure that I stagger plantings of my lettuce. So for instance, I'll plant lettuce and then a couple weeks later, I'll plant another round of lettuce so that they're a little behind the other ones. Let me just grab a little mycose to put on this. So we're just gonna put some mycose. This helps just inoculate it with the mycorrhizal association right off the start. So let's just get some mycose onto here. Then we're just gonna tuck this baby in. Just like this. And now what we did right there is we planted and harvested at the same exact time. So we're making sure that we get the most use out of this space. Like this, we're not wasting time or space. If we had directly sown a seed, then we would have to wait for that seed to come up. But this way, all we gotta do is just take a plant, plug it in, and let it do its thing. The second method I use to grow tons of food is what I like to call less is more. And this method may sound a little counterintuitive because what we're actually doing is removing some of our potential harvest in order to actually get more. So let me show you right here. Here we have a peach tree and you can see this thing is just absolutely loaded with peaches. Look how many peaches are just on this one branch. Years ago I would look at this and be like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get hundreds of peaches. This is just insane. But if I leave it like this, what will happen is a couple weeks from now, maybe even a month, all we'll be left with is hundreds of peaches that are tiny that never ripen. Because what we're doing here is we're leaving too many peaches on the tree for it to even manage and able to actually produce. So what I do now is I go around and I thin the peaches so that I leave only enough peaches on the tree that the tree can actually manage and get to maturity. Let me bring you to a different peach tree and show you what I mean. Right here is a peach tree that I've been thinning. You'll notice a difference. On this branch we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 peaches on this one branch instead of 30 like the other one. The idea with this is as these peaches get larger, they're going to be able to have this space where there's a gap between them, so they're not going to get any fungal issues. Also, with this amount of peaches, we're going to end up with a bunch of fruit that actually reaches maturity instead of having hundreds of fruit that never ripen. So there's another peach back here that needs to be thinned out. You'll notice, look how small this is. This one's never going to get to maturity, so we're just going to remove that just like that. So again, it may seem counterintuitive that actually taking things away can actually increase your harvest. And the same idea goes with pruning too. We prune a lot of our trees in the dormant season. This way we manage how much fruit is on it. Because if we have a tree, say, and we never pruned it, then the thing is just gonna have so much growth that the fruit isn't actually going to be getting any light, and this fruit needs light and airflow to avoid any kind of fungal issues or disease issues. So it's really important that everything gets light. The same thing goes for your apples and pears and all your other fruits too. I had a pear tree once that I just left way too much fruit on, and the pear branch actually ended up snapping. So instead of getting some fruit from it, I got none. The third method I use to grow tons of food is what I call look up. So what I mean by this is don't get locked in on just realizing how many square feet you have, but take a look up and make sure to utilize that vertical space. So in this section right here, I've got about 10 square feet, and in that section, I'm growing 10 tomato plants. The reason I can do that is because I'm pruning these tomatoes to a single stem and then growing them up the string. So they only need that 1 square foot. But if I was to allow my tomatoes to sprawl on the ground, they would need about 4 square feet. So what I'm doing is getting the most out of this space, and it also makes it super convenient because as these tomatoes start to grow, they'll get more light, more airflow, and it will be a lot easier to just go around and grab those harvests. This doesn't just pertain to tomatoes. So we should be growing our cucumbers, our squash, and any kind of plants that could vine up strings or up a trellis. This way we get that extra vertical space. Before I move to the next method, I just want to grab some water for Tuck. It's super hot out here. We're talking like in the 90s, so we want to make sure he stays hydrated. Tucky, some water, boy? Good boy. So we got some cold water in this, just so it's nice and fresh and cool for him, to make sure he gets a drink, because he's always out here with us. So I want to give him some nice fresh water. If you guys love seeing Tuck in the videos, just hit the subscribe button, and then also spam some hearts down in the comments if you guys love seeing this sweet guy. It's funny, I can't keep him inside even if it's super hot out. He likes going around, digging his holes under the trees, and then just hanging out and watching us, also watching over the garden. The fourth method I use to grow tons of food is what I like to call creating more space. The way I do this is by actually planting in pots and containers. So when you grow in containers like this, you're basically like creating space out of nowhere. So whether you have like a patio or a section where you can't have a permanent garden, it's nice to be able to grow in containers to make sure you get a nice harvest. So just because you don't own your own home doesn't mean you can't grow some of your own plants. The fifth method I use to grow tons of food is to space my plantings out correctly. So when we space things out correctly, we're both not wasting any space, but we're also allowing those plants to reach full maturity and not be planted too densely. The way I achieve this is by using the square foot gardening method. So when we use the square foot gardening method, we can break everything down into one specific square foot. This way, you know how much to plant in that 1 foot. Say it's, 4 lettuces like we have right here. And you can allow them to reach maturity and be planted dense, but not too dense. So it's exactly what we want, not wasting any space. Some people ask me how I make my square foot sections. I just take a drill and a string and then just drill it into the side, just like that, and just allow my strings to run through. It's a real easy and simple way to be able to just see how everything breaks down into 1 square foot. The sixth method I use to grow tons of food is what I call the food forest method. So what I mean by this is actually blending together both perennials and annuals, a diverse number of them. When we do this, we're kind of giving ourselves a little bit of harvest insurance. And the other thing is the annuals, they may be highly productive, but they're also a good amount of work. So when the spring comes and we're focused on a lot of those annuals, our perennials are constantly in the background working for us, like these strawberries here. The majority of the work I did for these strawberries was actually on the off season. Now that I'm working on the annuals, the strawberries can be doing their thing, producing a lot of fruit. The blueberries are the same too, like right next to me here. These blueberries are going to continue to produce and look excellent. Meanwhile, in the off season, all we really had to do was prune these. Now that we're in season, these blueberries, they only just need a little bit of maintenance, and we're getting some good production. The seventh method I use to grow tons of food is what I like to call being proactive. So what I mean by this is realizing that pests and bugs are going to come, but to be proactive about them to try to prevent the issues before they arise. Let me give you an example right here. So here we have some peas that are growing just beautifully, but in previous years I had some issues growing my peas. After observing, I realized that the birds were the culprits. They were the one eating all my young pea plants so that they couldn't get some good growth and get to production. So what I do now is just cover this section so that the birds can't get in, and you can see the difference. We've got some beautiful peas producing. Even some of these little purple peas are about ready. We can start harvesting them. So you have to be realistic and know that problems are going to rise. The idea is to know what kind of plant you're growing and know the issues that they could have, whether they be bugs or whatever kind of issues, and then try to stay on top of those and prevent them before they happen. It's much easier to deal with prevention than actually having to manage an issue when it happens already. The same thing goes for my fruit trees. I know that the plum curculio are going to come and bite at my fruit, so what I do is I spray them with the kaolin clay protectant before it actually happens. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. You'll notice I'm walking through all these stakes here. We started to get our tomatoes in. We're gonna be growing them up stakes. Soon we'll have like 10, 12-foot tomato trees. I just cannot wait. Fresh tomatoes right off the vine, nothing like it. Before I let you go, I wanted to leave you with a bonus tip. The bonus tip is something I've mentioned before, and it's to make sure you're journaling everything you do. When you put things out, any problems you had, because your journal will end up being one of the most valuable pieces of information for your specific location on when you should do things and what works for you. It's super important. Bill Mollison has talked about it before. I think it was him, where he said like years ago, maybe the 1800s or 1900s, the farmers used to record everything they did on their property, and then when someone bought the property, they could give that journal to the next person. So imagine we had like 20 years of journaling in the location that we're growing now. I mean, it would just make everything so much easier. Before I let you go, I want you to know to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share with your friends. Don't forget to check out the merch at jamesprigioni.com also. And I also want to thank Cheryl Jones. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for becoming a member. It means so much to me and Tuck. And just know that you're directly contributing to everything we're doing here. All the tomatoes we're producing, the lettuces, and just everything else. So we wanted to thank you for that. Me and Tuck we're getting a little warm because it's a scorcher out here today, but we'll be back at you again real soon. Tuck and James, we